Hello, everyone. This is Pete Meyer at another episode of In the Workshop. Here recently, we had done a training video on headlight reconditioning, a service that's kind of often overlooked in the industry. It's a great menu item to add to your shop if you don't already, and it's a very needed service. And it's not that hard. It's a fairly simple process, but there are some do's and don'ts. So to help you kind of iron those out, we went to somebody who really knows. Let me introduce Todd Mathas. He is with 3M as a technical service specialist. Hey, Todd, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Pete?
Great. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time. I mean, we're here recording this here as middle of January, and of course, I'm enjoying a little light rain, but still warm weather. I mean, you're up there in Minnesota, literally buried under the snow, right? So
Exactly.
So at least you get to sit in a nice warm office, and you're going to fill us in on some of the do's and don'ts of doing a professional headlight reconditioning. Let's start, Todd, with the need. You know, why is this a service that shops should consider as more than just aesthetic?
It's definitely more than an appearance thing. A lot of guys really are concerned about their vehicle and the appearance, but the safety factor is really, in my mind, the more important aspect to it. When everybody has probably seen a light, you know, something that looks like this, very yellowed, and what that's doing is it's just degrading the plastic, the polycarbonate that's on the surface of that lens is degrading primarily from UV, chemicals, road chemicals, salt, sand, kind of beat it up. So all those things contribute. And what happens is that layer, whether it's a lot of pitting, yellowing, it blocks the light from shining through the face of that headlight lens. So it can reduce the amount of light very significantly. I did a pretty in-depth test on several headlights, kind of the before and after, measuring the light output. And I was very surprised. Many lights that you see that once they take on that yellow hue, you can refurbish those and you'll increase that light output by over 100%. In a lot of cases, it's 200–300%. I've seen it even higher than that, but it's a significant amount of light, and that safety is really the key there. Appearance, yes, everybody sees it, and it's a great improvement, and people enjoy that, but the real story there is safety.
Yeah, and I certainly don't disagree with that. I mean, you know, as professional technicians, that's one of the things that should always be first and foremost in our mind. You know, here in Florida, we get the torrential downpours, and of course, a lot of fog. So that's certainly somewhere we need to get the most light out of our lenses, and I'm sure you guys suffer the same issues in the colder climates. You know, with the blinding snow, and you know, you just need your lights to work. You know, and it's one of those things too that kind of happens over time, right? It's not the customer doesn't realize a night and day difference. Literally, you know, they're starting off as that slowly degrades, and it gets a little less, a little less, a little less. They don't really realize the change, you know, until you help them out and perform this service, and they see that difference, right?
That's exactly right, and that's an important point. A lot of people that have this problem aren't aware of it until it's brought to their attention, and that's something we've done. 3M has done. Headlight Safety Month is October for us, where we try to bring that awareness up that time of year when the days get shorter. But I'm surprised. I've been working with headlight restoration for 5–6 years now, and I am surprised how many people don't realize they even have an issue. And then once you do that repair, it's really a delighter because you know, people are driving around with their brights on because they think their headlights are just dimming down, getting older, but in reality, they're just getting a buildup of that degraded polymer on the surface of their lens. So it definitely is an awareness thing with vehicle owners.
Yeah, and now in the video that we did, I happened to use a Sylvania kit. Mainly because I'd done some research and I saw that Popular Mechanics had selected a few as among their top, you know, 5. Of course, 3M was right there too. Now the Sylvania kit worked really well, but it was kind of labor intensive, and of course that's to be understood. It was a do-it-yourself kit, but you understand that the 3M has a professional line, and you're going to share some tips on that Pro Series and, again, some of the do's and don'ts, for the guys who out there to get a good job.
Exactly, and I'll kind of back it up and give you an idea of what you need to do. So typically when you see a headlight that's yellowed very badly or minorly, but either way, that damage is typically on the surface of that lens. So whenever I'm training and giving talks on headlight restoration and the yellowing problem, I like to point that out. Now, what you need to do to restore that lens, you need to get that degraded layer off, and that's the key to having a good system. Now, 3M is a company based on abrasives. That's how we started. So you need a good abrasive to remove that yellowing. That being said, if you remove it, you're gonna put some sand scratches in that lens, and it's kind of going to be one of those things where it might look a little worse before it looks better. But in order to you have good abrasives, you get that stuff off, then you need the polishing step, the refining and the polishing capabilities of a system if you truly want to get that lens to look like new again. And that's really what our kit is designed to do. What we've done is we actually came into the market with a professional kit first, and the professional kit consists of it comes in a tool bag like this, and it's kind of nice. It's inclusive in that kit. You can keep everything you need in there. It comes with a couple of tools, very good 3M tools. You get a DA sander,
oh yeah,
and a rotary polisher. So a rotary polisher.
Sweet.
Both in 3-inch, and 3-inch is really helpful because a lot of the headlights, you're going to do the restoration while it's in the vehicle, and you get a lot of tight corners, especially with some of the newer designs. You can get at the full face of that without and minimize any risk of damage around that headlight. So the keys with this system, you start out with that DA sander, and we started off with 500 grit. So 500 grit in our premium abrasive, our purple clean sand abrasive, and that 500 grit, that's kind of the workhorse step, and that's the removal step. So once you get all that yellowing off in that first step, then it's time to move on and refine and polish. But what can happen many times, and this is a kind of a common pitfall I see, is when you sand that layer off, and I'm going to try to get this up to the camera, you can see that blotchiness on the screen there where this headlight lens is right in here?
Yes.
That is an indicator that you're not done sanding with that 500 grit step. You want to keep going. You don't want any blotchy, you don't want any glossy, you don't want any yellow. You want it to look like this side of the lens. And I call that a nice, even, frosty appearance. And that's what you want. When you get to this point, you know that you've removed that degraded layer, and now you've got fresh polymer there. It's hazy looking or frosty looking, but the defects have been removed. So now from this point on, all we're going to do with the rest of the steps are just refine to an 800 grit scratch. Then we're going to use a proprietary, a patented abrasive with 3M. We have a 1,000 grit and a 3,000 grit, and this is a unique abrasive. It's an abrasive coated on a foam, and you use that with water. Now this was originally designed for clear coat paint applications, but it works fantastic on polycarbonate. So
let me back up just a real quick question, Todd. Now, so the 500 grit, that's a dry sand?
Yeah, so the 500 and the 800 are what I would call a more conventional abrasive.
Mm-hmm.
A coated paper abrasive that you can use. You use that dry, so you sand with your 500, you get all the defects and yellowing off dry. You sand with the 800, and all you're doing with that 800 is refining that 500 grit scratch. Then, when you move to the 1,000 and the 3,000 grit, they're going to be those foam Trizac discs, and that's used with water. So you miss the headlight with water, you miss the disc with water, and sand wet. You'll get kind of a white slurry that tells you that it's working. The more and longer you sand with those steps, the easier and faster and better result you're going to get. That headlight's going to be much clearer because those discs do such a great job on polycarbonate to refine and eliminate those scratches that we've put in to get rid of the defects. So so then we're going to be left with a light haze on the headlight after that 3000 grit. At that point, we're going to switch tools and go to a rotary tool with a foam pad, and then we're going to use our rubbing compound, our Protectant. Many guys in the industry are familiar with the Protectant line of products for paint finishing. This is our top tier rubbing compound, Protectant rubbing compound in the kit. You get a 16-ounce bottle, or 16-ounce bottle there, and then you polish that out. Now the tool is important there because we're going from a DA action for sanding, which is the optimum tool for sanding. Your abrasives will last longer, they won't load up as fast, they won't build as much heat. When you get to the polishing step, that rotary action, much like a big, an 8-inch buffing wheel, that rotary action works in your favor and polishes those scratches out very quickly. So at this point, you polish it with rubbing compound. In most cases, that headlight's done and probably going out the door at that point. But there are some headlights. I've got one here. That's a really good example. Some of the newer styles that have this real clear, no lines, no ribbing on the inside, just a really nice, clean, clear face on them. I typically like to do one more step with that, and that is our Protectant machine polish, and we just switch foam pads to a softer black pad and polish that. And what I like about doing that step is you get a nice final, real nice pop and clarity, and it really gives it that like new appearance. So at that point you're done. Now, this is kind of a weird category of products and systems that are out in the market. Unfortunately, there are a lot of products and systems that don't work well, and where I typically see things kind of fall down is they don't provide abrasives that are good enough to efficiently get all that yellowing and your defects off, or they get the defects off, but the polish or the compound that's provided doesn't get those scratches or that haze all the way out. So the end result is the headlight will look better typically, but you'll still see very visible scratches, maybe some haze there. And what I see in the long run is the appearance doesn't look as good, but they tend to re-yellow faster. So the better job you can do and the cleaner, clearer, more polished you can get a lens, the more longevity you're going to get out of that after it's been restored.
Yeah, so that kind of leads me to another question there for you, Todd. I know that for example, the product that we used in the video included a clear coat protectant. And I know there's some other products in the market that also recommend this clear coat protectant, even heat treated. I've seen a few postings on. Address that for me. Is that something that's needed, or what's the deal with that?
So
what's 3M's position on it?
So I'll give you. So our position, what we would tell you is, once you've restored a lens, what we recommend is keep that lens waxed. Keep it waxed as you wax your vehicle. What that's going to do, it's not going to give you a ton of longevity in terms of UV protection. What it's going to do is keep that lens cleaner longer. Something as simple as car wash chemicals, if you drive through a touchless car wash, a lot of things like that will absorb into that polycarbonate. It's fairly porous, and a coat of wax will actually keep things from absorbing into that and contributing to that yellowing. So for a coating, and I get asked this every time I show it and talk about it, we don't have a coating that we recommend at this point. We've contacted some of the paint companies. We've looked at some different chemistries. We continue to do some work in that arena. The things that are very difficult and the technical challenge with coating a headlight lens kind of post-OEM is you need to have a hard coat on there. And if you don't have a hard coat on there, you really don't get a lot of benefit from a lot of those coatings. And what I see, what I typically have seen with different coatings over the years that I've looked at is one of two failure modes. Either they will yellow more rapidly than the actual polycarbonate that you polish on its own, so that coating will yellow faster, and then you need to sand that coating off and repolish. But more commonly, what you see with a lot of coatings are, and this is one of the technical challenges, it's hard to get coatings to stick to polycarbonate.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get a coating on there, some of them look good. They look clear. They look nice out of the gate. And then within a couple months, you get a couple rock chips, and it'll start picking, peeling, flaking.
Sure.
And then it just ruins the appearance. And then you kind of end up coming back, resanding those and polishing them.
Right.
So right now, we haven't found a coating that we're happy with. What we typically see and tell our customers is when you refurbish a lens with our kit, you typically will get a year, and you can get up to 2, 3, or more years of good clarity. And it really depends on two primary. There's kind of two things that contribute to that the most, that determine your longevity. One is your immediate area. You get in Florida, you're going to have a lot higher UV index than I'm going to have in Minnesota. So what I typically do in Florida, I see things yellowing in that 3 to 5 year time frame, whereas up in the northern states, I see it more in the 5 to 8 year time frame. So depending, you're going to see something re-yellow faster than what I'm going to see, and it will typically be shorter than what you see from the OEM. So if the OEM, you get 5 years, you might get 2 years or a year and a half out of a refurbish. So the nice part is, once you've redone a lens like this, you can redo a lens several times over the life of the vehicle. You're not taking very much material off.
Sure.
There's plenty of thickness on those lights to do them several times. So you can really touch them up once a year with rubbing compound. Just hit them quick, polish them, and you're not going to get to that really yellowed state.
Right.
And the big deal here is, I talked about awareness earlier. This is really a great revenue opportunity for both the mechanical shop and the body shop, as well as the mobile detailers, anybody that's doing mobile work in the automotive. Wheels, they can add this to their menu item. It's very profitable. This typically, you see a pair of headlights, I would say the national average is in that $80 to $110 a pair across the country. I've seen it as high as close to $300, and I've seen it as low as $40 to $50. So it really depends on the market, depends on the vehicle. Some shops that are, I would call them very savvy shops, what they'll do is they'll have a customer with lights that are in pretty bad shape. They'll price out a new set, and then they'll quote them a price as a % of what a new headlight lens would cost. And if you haven't priced out headlight lenses, especially the OEM lenses, lately there's a lot of lenses in the $300 to $800 a piece range. So it's very profitable. The shop's going to have approximately $7 in materials per pair into a repair, and they're typically going to have 30 minutes to 45 minutes for a pair of lights. So that's their cost. So it's very profitable from that standpoint, but it's also a really good value for the consumer, especially when you compare it to replacing those headlights. So it's kind of a win-win there for both the revenue stream for the shop, as well as that consumers getting a really good benefit as well. So.
Well, again, I think we want to stress here too. We've always been stressing it through the magazine, professionalism in our industry. This is not a job that is just what I guess common term wallet flushing for some services might be.
Yeah.
This is a very legitimate service. You're improving the lighting, the safety of the vehicle by restoring the lighting capability that it had when it was brand new.
Exactly.
Of course, you're affecting the aesthetics. That's always nice, but that's not the primary reason. It's with that kit, it's a very simple process. I mean, everything you need is right there. You're looking at 30 to 45 minutes to do a pair, at the shop labor rate as compared to a new one. I guess to reiterate, Todd, some of the common mistakes. The very first one, when you're hitting with that 500, you make sure that you get a good job done, getting all that old damage off. That's primary number one. Invest a little extra time and get a good job on it. And what other common mistakes do you think guys need to be aware of? Let's recap those for them real quick.
So definitely that first step, getting everything removed. And then I would tell you probably the only other thing that I strongly recommend, and it's like anything with a process. Don't skimp on any of the steps. You know, when you sand with that 800, thoroughly sand that whole lens. When you move to the 1000, make sure you're going over that lens. Make plenty of passes. Make some extra passes. You're never going to hurt yourself by sanding a little extra, but if you cut it short and you kind of skimp, and everybody wants to try to cut corners and figure out a faster way, but you'll really save yourself time by just being very thorough, and the results are very repeatable. I see very good results across all makes and models. Some lenses sand a little bit harder. That surface is harder, so maybe that 500 grit step might take 2 discs on a typical headlight. On a headlight, that surface is very hard, and I mean the hardness, not in difficulty, but in hardness.
Right.
Maybe you'll use 3 or 4 on a tough light.
So how can you tell, Todd? I mean, if you're looking at the, I know we saw in the 500 grit, you can have a nice, even glaze, or not glaze, but hazed finish when you know you got it all right. It's going to be nice, smooth, even across the lens. Same with the 800, you know, nice, smooth, all the way across to give you an idea of what it's all gone. You don't have any blotches or irregularities in that sand pattern. Now, and what about when you get to the wet sanding? How do these guys know when they've sanded it enough?
So it's easy on that 500 grip because you're going from an irregular surface to a even uniform surface. But with the wet steps, 1,000 and 3,000, it's a little more difficult just visually looking at it. You do a couple lenses and you'll have a good idea. But what you should see is you should see progressively all the way through each step that haze should get finer and finer, and the clarity should keep getting better and better. And if it's not, do those steps a little bit longer. And an important thing with our process is if you get to the end, you hit it with rubbing compound, it polishes out, it looks pretty clear, but oh boy, I see on the left side there I missed some scratches. You don't have to go all the way back to the beginning and start over. I would take that last sanding step, that 3,000 grit, wet the lens and just sand that isolated area very thoroughly, and then hit it with compound again, and typically that will 99% of the time that'll take care of the scratches that you just missed. I miss them periodically. I'll miss a corner or an edge, but not a hard problem and not difficult. And this is a job that you don't need your highly skilled technician in the shop to have to do this. A lot of shops, they have their guy that's doing the final detail, customer get ready. They train them to do this. I always, when I train, tell them after you've done 1 or 2 lights, you'll be off to the races, and that takes the mystery out of it, and it's just not that difficult.
Sure. And last thing there, Todd, then, for those who are watching, if they want information on how they can get the 3M kit or more training information, where can they go to get it?
So you can go to 3mcollision.com. On that, you can go into libraries or training, education, and this, along with a number of our other best practices, all the way from estimating a vehicle when it comes into a body shop all the way to customer delivery, they're all broken out. You can go through, do an online class, and then you can print a certification when you're done. So, and headlight restoration is one of them found there. So you should be able to find a lot of really good resources and information there. 3mcollision.com.
Awesome. We'll make sure that we put the links there in the video descriptions, both on YouTube and in the AutoPro workshop, so guys can go right to it and find that information. Todd, hey, thanks so much for sharing these tidbits and tips on how to do a professional headlight reconditioning service using the 3M Pro kit. Certainly appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us today.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate the invite.